Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on Sunday, November 10th, 2013 at 5:10 in the afternoon, Eastern Time. Um, this is Sunday, of course, as I said, and so, of course, I went to church. And turns out, as I had mentioned yesterday, I think, I was scheduled to read the number 2 reading, and there's a possibility I was going to be doing all the readings and the prayers of the people. So, indeed, that's what happened. Now, well, it's not a new lectern. It's a new lectern to the church, but it's an old lectern. I discussed that some videos back. But the possibility of having a stool, so that those of us who are under 5'11" can at least see over the top of the. Well, actually, to see over the actual top of this thing, you've got to be about 6'1", 6'2". But so that your head in its entirety can be seen over the top of the lectern. This fellow who does a lot of our woodwork, I've talked about him before. He's retired. Well, he's not a retired veterinarian. He's a veterinarian in his mid 80s right now, still working, the veterinary ophthalmologist. But he does a lot of woodworking, and he made this thing out of walnut, and it's like all his work. It's just sublime. It's about the height of a normal step, perhaps just ever so slightly less, not quite that high. It's plenty big enough in terms of area to stand on, and it's movable. It's not fixed in place, which is good because I need to have it moved back a bit, because my problem is I tend to fall backwards after this great bludgeoning down of August 16th, 2011, and so I like to have a little bit of area behind me, so that if I have to step back, I can without going off over the back, which that would be a spectacular fall. Well, the carpet's thick enough. I might not do me too much damage if I maintained rigidity on the way down so that I fell properly. So anyway, I got there early enough to check it out, position it, and so forth, and it worked out okay. The only hooker is this thing. It's got a little tray. It's sloping, and there's a little tray at the bottom to keep your book from falling off onto your feet. But it doesn't have quite a big enough rise on it, because unless you close the lectionary book before you do the prayers out of the prayer book, and then whatever additional documents you have with you when you do the prayers, you have to hold everything in place with your hand, and there's a possibility you can drop this stuff. And plus it looks awkward. And fortunately, this microphone doesn't transmit a lot of that adventitial sound when you touch the reading stand like the old mic system did. It shouldn't, given what they paid for. But fortunately, that was all donated money. Somebody donated that as a purpose-built gift from a bequest. God bless Marilyn and Joe. Well, specifically, God bless Joe, because he's the one that left it, and Marilyn's the one that executed it over to the church. Anyway, so I think next time I read, which will be well, as far as I know, 2 weeks from now on Christ the King Sunday. Uh, I'll just close the lectionary book when I do the prayers, and then I can put my stuff down on. It frees up one half of the side of the tray that I can, put my stuff on. I did muff one word. I didn't come through this today unscathed. I muffed one word in, let's see, Haggai. Haggai. I always mispronounce that. Haggai. So let it be a lesson to us all. And then in 2 Thessalonians 2, the NRSV has, talks about the Thessalonian believers being the first fruits of, it says God chose you as the first fruits of, and then it goes on in the passage. That's the NRSV, but if you go to the Greek, where the NRSV has first fruits, it says ab arches. No, I'm sorry, ap arches. Ap arches. From the beginning. God chose you from the beginning, not as the first fruits. There's no fruit anywhere in the Greek on this one. Every now and again the NRSV pulls a stunt like that. You gotta watch it. So when I read the 2 Thessalonians, I substituted from the beginning for as first fruits. Actually, that's what the Authorized Version has anyway. That's the way I've always remembered it when I think about it, because that's what I grew up with. That's what I've internalized. Plus, it conforms to the actual Greek, not what some committee decided they had to do. See, why they did this, and I know why they did it. See, from the beginning smacks of that dreaded word, predestination, which is a vastly misunderstood, completely misunderstood idea, and it's always thought of in terms of how it's been caricaturized. It is not. It is a very, very subtle idea, almost two ideas running in parallel, that mirror what to humans appears to be the two wills of God. There's the will of God, which we really can never know. We can infer it from certain things that happen. We know how we'd like it to be. But humans have free will. So how can there be predestination? See, predestination is a bad word. It's a bad term. It should really be, conforming to the will of God. And we don't know what that is. We think we actually influence our own decisions. Well, in a way we can, but there's always that, well, is that God's decision that we made that decision? Is it really free will? There's always that borders on one of these mysteries. But Calvin wrote about this extensively, and even he had trouble articulating the idea. Might well be that he hadn't completely developed it in his mind, but he calls it the two apparent wills of God, although there's only one will of God. Well, anyway, that's why I'm sure that's why this committee that was putting together the NRSV made that substitution, because they just don't like certain ideas. That's why they always put and sisters for when the Greek has only one word for brothers. Doesn't say ancestors, it says brothers. Yeah. Doesn't say humankind, it says mankind, anthropos. Which actually anthropos carries with it a larger meaning than one single sex. Well, we can't say mankind, that's the humankind. Give me a break. Well, to move on, this is almost going to be as long as the service. We sang 6 songs, and this new choir director and organist, she likes to select hymns that have at least 4, 5, or 6 verses, and we sing every one. Well, I love to sing. Now, I don't know if I want to sing 6 or 7 hymns during the service. I like to sing 4. Sometimes I like to sing 5. Depends on how long, how many people are coming up to take communion, We sang 7 today, and one of them, the rector called down out of thin air. Let's sing the Ode for Joy. Well, the way that came about was he had shown us. He had shown us on a PowerPoint, one of these little computer projector things, on a wall of the church, a side wall. This flash mob video out in front of a bank, where an orchestra comes out piecemeal, piece by piece by piece by piece, and they start playing Beethoven's Ode to Joy, from the Ninth Symphony, the last movement of the Ninth Symphony. And it's a great video. This good friend of mine sent it to me. It was one of the first things that she ever sent me when I sort of got able to use email and things and figure out how to use this computer. And I tried to download it at that point, but I didn't have downloading software, and so I used one of these Safari extension things, which now no longer works. So I now did download it properly today using my Mac X YouTube downloader software, which, despite the fact the versions seem to change about every 3 or 4 days, although they've been constant here the last 10 days. I properly downloaded it, but Charles showed this video, and he was using it to illustrate a point about how even in the midst of people, a crowd of people, we can find ourselves in exile, and then he tied that into, well, people who are exiled, like in our midst, like widows or multiple divorcees, or any number of other examples that he came up with. And I can't say that I would have noticed that point in the video unless he hadn't pointed it out, since I'm more focused on the music rather than what the people are doing necessarily. But as he took me aside before the service and said, he said, you notice this PowerPoint machine? He had it in the center aisle, the middle of the center aisle. And I said, yeah. He says, now, settle down. Well, I said, I'm settled. I thought they were going to have a series of talks about either the diocesan convention or the stewardship campaign, and I thought one of the people who were going to talk about that had, said, "Oh, I can just show a little PowerPoint thing about it, some slides." Okay, that's between the liturgy of the Word and the liturgy of Holy Communion, and no, he says I'm going to use that's going to be part of my sermon. Well, of course, what happened was, this was classic, and I said to myself, I wonder if that thing's going to freeze up when he starts to use that, because it's a Windows product. Well, anything can freeze up, but we all know that, the dreaded blue screen of death is always lurking in a Windows product. Even I have heard that much. So, sure enough, that's what happened. He went down there to, sort of unleash this great visual aid and just nothing. Just nothing. It just it went blank. It just went blank. So, this one fellow who had been our senior warden until last year, and then a fellow that teaches history and math and coaches football up at a town north of us, and who does a lot of their information technology for the school system up there. They came over and they started working. Charles even took off his stole and his alb. They're down on their knees. So they got this thing going, and okay. Now, I have my theory as to why this thing shut down, because it was working perfectly fine before the service, because I watched them check it out. One of this sort of autistic, lively lad who was an acolyte today was down there. He took one of the torches down when they read the gospel, and so he was standing next to this thing, and the resting light was on. It said like Dell, and had like a little logo. It was on. So he started making little bunnies and dogs and shadow things during the gospel. He's like this far from the gospel book, and he's horsing around with this machine. Now, I have a feeling that there's a possibility that he may have somehow done something else that I didn't see. See, I was up in the chancel area, and I was looking down toward all this. But this kid is smart as a whip, and I wouldn't put it past him to pull the stuff. I will say that for the rest of the service, he had been fairly well behaved during the first part of the service, but during the rest of the service, he was flinching and jerking around all over the place. So I don't know. Was that his conscience taking hold of him? I don't know. Who knows what goes through these individuals' heads? I can be that way a bit myself, although I learned to not necessarily manifest the physical other stuff. But I know what goes on inside my head, and most of it I can't show you. It caused my folks to sometimes despair of me. Well, anyway, so he finally got it to work, and he made his point, and people seem to be very happy to have been able to watch this video. It's a good video. Find it on YouTube and watch it. And so then things sort of moved on okay, and So I, that was that. And one woman says, was talking about it. I said, well, I can send you a link to that. She says, oh, would you? And I said, sure. So I came home and I looked up her email address in the church directory and found the thing and sent her the link. But then about an hour later, boom, back into my email comes, this email account is defunct. She hasn't used it for so many months, and we shut her off. So I printed it out, just sent it to her by regular mail. I don't know, maybe she doesn't even know that they've cut her off. She's a very free spirit. She and I are very theologically, diametrically opposite people, but she's a good soul. And she believes. She believes in the resurrection, the reality of Jesus as God, the Trinity. She also likes to do a lot of this, spiritualism, seance-y stuff. And of course, she's also very big on, if just she's married, to a man, and but she's very much one of these potentially aggressive feminists. Not what I call a true feminist. It's aggressive feminist, and she wears all these rings and stuff on her hands. She's got enough hardware on her hand. If she got into a bar fight, she could do serious damage with all the stuff she's got on her hands. It's like brass knuckles. Plus, she puts on this really thick lipstick and makeup, and when she takes communion, she's one of the ones that drinks the wine rather than intinks the bread in the wine. I have to use an extra wipe with the rag on the lip of that goblet, to clean off all the crap she leaves from her lips, And then you've got this rag. They call it a purificator. Well, by the time you get done with this thing ain't pure. I'm going to tell you that right now. This is a pretty disease-ridden rag. But it's got this thick sludge. It might almost as if you had, cleaned up its mistake while you were painting something. This is an intelligent woman. She was an army nurse for 20 years. She's got a pension from the army. She's no slouch. But, well, enough of that. So, home safe, all's well. I'm going to watch okay, it's 5:30. I'm going to watch the departure from the space station of this crew. That's kind of neat because you can watch this Soyuz kind of hanging down off in the distance for quite some time, and then you can sort of see them when they fire their retro rockets, and then they sort of start falling away out of sight. It's very impressive, and then you can often watch it land. The last time a crew landed, the next to last time a crew landed, they had a shot from one of these helicopters circling the landing sites. You could watch this thing come down and actually land right while it's happening. It's great fun, and it should all be over by about 11 o'clock tonight. I can actually probably stay up and watch that. Okay, now Paul's got tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday off, and at least as of stands now, he's not home yet. So we'll find out more anon. But until that time, I'm going to say bye-bye, YouTubers. Excuse me, again. Bye-bye.